Hey, welcome back to COSC 1437, Introduction to Java. In this video, I'm going to talk about inheritance. I'm going to go through a few slides, just a few of them, and I'm going to actually show you an example of creating a class and a derived class using the online compiler. So we're going to talk about inheritance. We're going to look and see how, what is a subclass and what is a superclass and how do we create those? How do we override methods of a superclass? We're going to examine the constructors for superclasses and subclasses. And then we'll have a different video for these topics. So inheritance is a relationship. So I can create a class, and that's called my superclass. And then the superclass can create a subclass that inherits from the superclass. So we have a single inheritance, which means that a subclass is derived from only one class, one superclass. And then we have multiple inheritance, which means that a subclass can inherit from more than one class. In Java, we only have single inheritance. So we can only, we can have a subclass that inherits from only one superclass. So here's an example. Let's say that we have a class called shape. So the class at the top here is our superclass. And then the class circle can inherit from the class shape. The class rectangle can inherit from the class shape. There can be a class called square, and square can inherit from class rectangle. And then rectangle inherited from shape. So we call this the purple ones. These are the subclasses. This is a superclass. Squares also a subclass. And the superclass of squares, rectangle. The superclass of rectangle is shape. The way that this is defined, we have modifiers like public, private, or protected. We have the reserved word class, the name of the class, and the word extends. So if I have the this one right here, rectangle, I would say public class rectangle, and I make it public because I want people to use my class. So public class rectangle extends shape. So this is the superclass. So public class circle extends shape. So here are the rules that when we do something like this, when we inherit from a class. The private members of the superclass are private to the superclass. So in this case, circle, anything that's private in circle would stay private and cannot be, I'm sorry, anything in shape. So shape is the superclass. Any private members of shape cannot be accessed by circle. So mostly it's going to be data that's going to be private. There might be some methods, but the data would be private in shape. Circle would not have access to anything that's private. The subclass can directly access the public members of the superclass. So what it means to directly access means that you don't have to create the object to access it. You just call the method that you want. So I'm looking at an example that I wrote here. Okay, the subclass can include additional data and or method members. So, and step 3 is obvious. I mean, you don't create a subclass without wanting to add more. So you create a subclass and you add more data, more methods. So another rule is the subclass can override, that is, it can redefine the public methods of the superclass. So we can override the public methods. However, this redefinition applies only to the objects of the class, of the subclass, not the objects of the superclass. So when we override the public methods, it only applies to the objects of the subclass. All the data members of the superclass are also data members of the subclass, unless they are private. So if the data members are private, you're not going to have access in the subclass. That's why you would use get and set methods. Similarly, the methods of the superclass are also methods of the subclass. Again, if they're public methods, you can use them in the subclass. To write a method's definition of a subclass, specify a call to the public method of the superclass. Specify a call to the public method of the superclass. If subclass overrides public method of superclass, specify call to public method of superclass. Okay, so if you have, what this is saying here, if you have a method in the superclass with the same signature as a method in the subclass, then you have to put super dot and the method name. But if the method is not overridden, then you just call the method name from the superclass. So you don't have to say super dot method name. You only do this if the method name, if there's two method signatures that are the same in the superclass and the subclass. Okay, so I'm going to stop here and I'm going to actually show you an example of how we do this, because you're going to be writing a program where you create a superclass, then you create a subclass, and then you create a test program. So let's go ahead and do that so you're able to do your assignment. So when we're here, remember that main, this is going to be this is what tests, what I'm going to use to test my classes. So I'm going to go ahead and call this class my test program. You could call it, and I don't know if in your assignment I tell you what to call it whatever it says on there. So I'm going to rename it. The name of the file needs to be the same as the name of your class. So test program.java. Okay, so my test program is going to test my classes, and I don't know yet what my classes are, so I'm just going to leave it here. I'm going to go ahead and create a new file. And what I'm going to be doing is, my example is going to be, I'm going to have a class called person. In person, I'm going to make it really simple just because I want it for example purposes. This person class is going to contain first and last name. And then I'm going to create a class student. Well, a student is a person. Because a student is a person, I'm going to go ahead and inherit from the class person. Now, this would be something that you would use in real life. For example, let's say that you're creating an HR, human resources program. So in human resources program, you could have, let's say for a university, you could have a class that is called person, and maybe it has first name, last name, birthday, social security number, address. And these things are good for your employees. Your employees, you need to have all that information. You also need to have all that information for students. except if you're a student, you would add some other things, for example, like a student ID. Not only would you have their social, but you would have an ID associated to them. So this is kind of like what we're going to do. I'm going to do it really simple. The person class is just going to have the first and last name. So person.java. So this is going to be a public class, and the name is going to be person. Okay. My person class would have 2 private data members. Remember, we keep our data private because we want to protect the data. That's the whole thing about creating classes. We encapsulate the data with the methods, and only through the methods do we alter the data. So we don't let users who use our class alter the data. We give them methods so that we know that it's altered properly or changed properly. So I'm going to have a variable called first name, and it's going to be of type string, and then private string last name. Now, what are the methods and the constructors? What are the other members that we need? Well, we need constructors. We have to construct a person, and then we need methods. We need the set and the get methods, at least those. So a constructor would be, first, I can create a person without any parameters. So a blank person, so a person that would have no first name and no last name. So it'd be blank. And then I could set their name and set their first and last name using get and set methods. So here, first name would just be set to a blank string, excuse me, and last name would be set to a blank string. I also want a constructor. I want to construct a person that I can pass it the first and last name. So I would be receiving a string for first name, and I would be receiving a string with the last name. These variables that I'm creating here are, you can call them anything you want. FL, you can call them first name, last name, just like you call these. These are local to the constructor. And then here it would say first name equals F name, and last name equals L name. So we've got our constructors. And then the next thing that we want is do some get and set method. So we could do a set first name method. And if we set it, they're going to give us a first name and we set it. So they're going to pass us a string with the first name. And then we would say first name equals F name. And again, I can call this variable anything. Okay, I decided to call it F name. And that's just setting the first name. So I'm going to do the same thing, but this time I'm going to set the last name. Oops. So set last name. This will be last name. This will be last. So this variable here is this private variable there. And remember that when you're in a class, these are called fields, constructors, and then these are going to be our set and get methods. Set and get methods. And these are all members of the class. And remember that these are members. So we have 1 member, 2 members, 3 members, 4 members, 5, 6 members so far. So the fields, the constructors, and the methods are all members. All right. Then I want to do some set. Some get. So we got get the first name. Now for getting the first name, all we're doing is returning. So there's something that I forgot here in my set method. So my set method, I need to provide two things. One, this method does not return anything, therefore it's void. And this method is public. So I'm gonna say public void. This is public because I want whoever creates an object of type person, I want them to be able to access these methods. These are going to be public, but they're going to return, because it's get, they're going to return a string. They're going to return the first name and the last name. So this one would say return first name. And then I would have another one that says public string get last name. And it returns a last name. So it's returning these values here. Okay, so this is my person class. Again, it just contains first and last name. I can construct a person without anything, pass it nothing, pass it two values, two strings, and then I have my get methods and my set methods. Of course, I can create other methods if I would like. Maybe I can create a method that returns the full name, and you return it, you concatenate the first and the last name. You could do that if you wanted, but this is all I'm going to do for this one. The next file that I'm going to create, it's going to be the student class. So the student class, a student is a person. So student public class student will extend. So extend is a it's going to be also a reserved word, and it's going to extends. So that's why reserved, and it's going to extend from the class person. It's extends person. When we say extends, it means that we're adding. So we've got person and we're adding to person. So you have to add something. So what are we adding? We're adding the student ID number. So this student class will only have one private data member, and it's going to be a string with the ID number, student ID. Now, of course, in real life, our student class can contain the student's GPA, the student's record, like their grades by semester, and whatever else you would need for student. Maybe there's some special things you need for students. Like I know for students, they have to have certain vaccinations before they enter college. That could be, you know, are they vaccinated with that? Yes or no. Or ours is going to have a student ID. Okay, so we're actually like, if I want to use this class student, I want to be able to print the student's first name, the student's last name, and the student's ID number. So to be able to do that, I need to provide a method to, first of all, create a student. Okay, so if I want to create a student, I can create a student with student ID, with first name, last name, and student ID, or I can create just an empty student. So first of all, I'm just going to create an empty student. This is a constructor. And so how do I access my data? So I have class person, and person has first name and last name, but those are private. So because they're private, student can, I can't say first, I can't say first name equals that. I can't do that. So there's two ways that I can do this. One way is I can call set. I can call these methods here. set first name and set last name because those are public. I can also create an object of type student and create it with empty values. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say set first name. So set first name is right here and it's public. And because it's public and I'm extending it, I don't need to, it's going to let me use it just like if it was inside student. So I'm going to say set first name and I'm just going to set it to empty. Set last name to an empty string. And then student ID is part of this class. So student ID would equal empty string. Awesome. Now let's say that I want a student and I'm going to pass it the value. So I'm going to pass it first name. Oops. String first name. I'm just going to say F to make it easy on me. Student last name. Oops. It's supposed to be string, the data. String last name, and then an ID number. So now instead of doing set, I'm going to use get. So I'm going to say get last name. I'm sorry, not get. Set first name. I'm going to do the same thing I did here, except I'm going to actually pass it a value. F. Set last name. L. And then student ID equals. So when I create a student, if I pass it a first name, it will set it in the superclass. It will set the last name in the superclass. Then here in the subclass, student ID will be set to the value. Okay, in my student, I can also do a get first name, get last name, get student ID, set. I can do all the sets, set first name, set last name, set. So let's do that. I'm going to just look real quick. What are all the different methods that I created? So for student, for this, just for this example, I'm just going to do a get student first name and test it. So I want to just test to see if this works. So this will be public string get student first name. Return. So I'm going to return the student's first name. Therefore, I'm going to say get first name. And now in my test program, I'm going to test student. I want to see if student actually works. And so what I'm going to do in my test program is I'm going to construct a student. So I would say student S equals new student. Now let's say that I construct an empty student. No, I don't pass it anything. It should just be blank for the student name, first name, last name, and ID number. So what I'm going to print out is, I'm just going to print out the student's first name. And the reason I'm going to do that is because in my student class, I've only created get student first name. I haven't done get last name or get ID, so I can't test that yet. So I'm just going to test this one. So I'm going to copy the name of it. And I'm going to call it here. Get student first name, boom, boom. So when I run this, it should just print an empty string. So it should not print anything for the first name. Let's see if we have any errors. So we're going to run it. Now, notice here in this error, it's telling you where the error is. So this error happens to be in test program. What that means is that we've already checked yeah, because it's already here at this point, then it's already checked person and student, and it was okay. I just want to, before I fix this error, I want to make an error in person. So let's say that I take out this F, okay? So I misspelled my variable and I run test program. I just want to show you that here, you see here it says person. So this is telling you to go to that file and to fix this variable name. It says it cannot find name. Therefore, that means you haven't defined it. So here, when you have multiple files, look here to see where the error and which file is the error. Okay, so let's go back to person. Let's fix that first. F name. Run it. And then we're back at test program. So here the error says system.out.println. Okay, so all right, so I called this method get student first name, which is in the student file, but I did not put what class. If I put nothing in front of this, it thinks that that method is in the main here in this test program class. I've got to put it, I got to tell it where it's coming from. So this method is in the student class. So I would put s dot get student first name. So the object that I created is an object s. That object s, if you want to picture this, it's in memory and it has a blank. It has memory space for first name, last name, and ID, but they're all blank. They're all just nulled. So when I run it, it says the student's first name, and then it just has nothing. It's blank because I created a blank student. So this constructor goes here and it calls this constructor. Now I want to test this constructor to see if it works. So I'm going to go here to my test program and I'm going to pass it a first name, Joe. Last name, Smith. And an ID number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, so now when I run it, it should say the student's first name is Joe. And that works. So I'm able to get the first name. So then I go back to student and I create my get student last name. So it's going to be the same thing, except instead of first, we're going to call it last. And then here we'll it's called last. So this get last name, remember, is in person. It's right here. Get last name right there. And we inherited all the public methods. So we use them like they're in our class, in our student class, which is a really cool thing about it. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. Okay, then we have to also, we have to get student first name and get student last name, and we need to get student ID. Now ID is in this class, so we're going to, first of all, let me put some spaces there. We're going to say public string get student ID. And in this case, what we're going to do is we're just going to return the variable student ID, which is local to this class, right? It's right here. So I return that. Let's do one thing. So here, let's just test. I just want to show you person has a private first name. So that means that student cannot, instead of doing this, if we did return first name, we're going to get an error. Let's see what the error says. So the errors in student.java. First name has private access in person. So it's telling you first name is private. So you cannot access it. So we have to do it this way and not this way. Okay. Now, after we do all our gets, we're going to do all our sets. And so to do the set, so we have public void set student first name. You can't access the data directly, but you do have, they're going to pass you a name. But you do have this set method here, set first name. So I'm going to copy that so that I have the exact name. So I would say set first name, and I would set it, I would pass first. And it sets the first name. And I would do the same thing for set last name. And then to set the student ID, I would just say student ID equals, because it's right here. So anytime that you do any sets or gets, you want to test them. So you could test them right here. Like I could say s dot set student, what did I call it? First name. And so let's say that I change his name to, oops, to Mark. And then I do another system out.println line. It should now say Mark. So I'm going to test this method that's in S in student. Set student first name. I pass it Mark, a string, and it should set it to Mark. So the first time it sets it to Joe, and then it sets the name to Mark. Here sets the name to Joe, and the last name is still Smith, and the ID number is still 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So why would we want to do this? Well, let's say that at some point you have some kind of program that allows you to edit student personal information. Let's say that I got my name changed and I went from Joe to Mark. Then this is how you would edit just one field by doing the set. So once again, person is the superclass. Person. It has to be public so that then student can extend class person. We're going to keep our data private, but we're going to keep our methods public so that they can set and get the information. Now the constructors are public also. And if we don't put the word public, the keyword public in front of it, they automatically are created as public members. So here, we'll do public. And it would run the same. or I could leave it out. So it is automatically set to public if you don't define it as public. Okay, so that's the end of that. And hopefully with this little example, you'll be able to do your chapter 10 assignment. For your chapter 10 assignment, you're going to be, here's your assignment. You're going to have a class, this is your lab 8, you're going to have a class point. This class will have member functions, those are the methods, to do the following. You're going to show the point. The point is like a XY. So it's going to be 2 integers, or it could be decimal numbers, because we're going to be talking about the point in a circle. So it could be like 2, 3 that the user enters. 2 for X, 3 for Y. So you're going to be able to show the point. So if they enter 2, 3, you would show 2, 3. You set the point. So you set the X and the Y, and you print the point. So your data members are going to be X and Y. Those are your 2 data members, and they have to be private. Then what I want you to do is just write a small test program to just test this class. Can you set X and Y? Does the set members methods work? Do the get member methods work? And then make sure you have 2 constructor empty points. So 0, 0, or I can pass it a point like 2 and 2 for X, 3 for Y. Okay, so once you do that, make sure that you've got it saved and download just in case something happens to your compiler or your computer. And then you're going to create a new class called Circle. This class Circle is going to extend this class point. So you'll write extend point. In this class, you will have a member, I should change that to methods instead of functions. To do the following, you're going to have a method that sets the radius, a method that prints the radius, a method to set the center. So the center is going to be your point, your X, Y. Print the center, calculate the area, print the area, calculate the circumference, and print the circumference. So what is the user going to give you for circle? What's going to be your data for circle? So your data for circles has to be radius, and radius is going to be private. And the user can create a circle by passing the point and the radius. So they would pass like X 2, Y 4, radius 10, something like that. Then you're going to have a test program to test. Make sure you test the center. You can print the center. You can set the radius, print the radius, print the area and the circumference. So test all your methods and make sure that you take a screenshot of all of your tests. So you could call all these at once in the test program and then just print that out. And that's your lab assignment. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and stop this video. And then the next video is going to talk about polymorphism. And also we're going to talk about a little bit, I didn't talk about, let me see what else was on that slide. Oh yeah, so I didn't show you how we override a class. There's some examples in this slide, so we'll go over that. And then we'll I have a small video that I want you to watch about polymorphism and abstract classes. And that's it. Okay. All right. Good luck with your lab and email me if you have any questions. Thank you.